Welcome back to another episode of TrueNAS Tech Talk. Today, Tom Lawrence from Lawrence Systems will be joining us to talk about his history with TrueNAS, both personally and professionally. We'll talk about some of the larger and wilder installations he's made, his thoughts on data hoarding, data ownership, and data sovereignty, how they're influencing trends in the storage industry, and we'll share some thoughts on AI and where that's going. All this and more coming up next. Well, welcome to our guest, Tom Lawrence from Lawrence Systems. Tom, thanks for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, this is great. Long time coming. We've been looking forward to this for a while, Tom. So really appreciate the time.
Yeah, we've chatted on the back end over the years, I would say. I believe, man, a long time ago, Chris Moore, you were on my channel. I can't remember. That was how many years ago. We need to fix that.
Right. We should. Happy to be back if you want me.
Yeah, I've crashed your live streams a couple times, but yeah, we should make it a sort of a formal planned event, sort of put the shoe on the other foot. But, while you're here, we got to do the standard things, like ask you, how long have you been using TrueNAS, both kind of in a personal and a professional kind of state here?
So this took me some research because it feels like forever because tech years are like dog years. They're way more.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe 8 was the first version I started using. I had to, because I remember the years I started using. I just can't remember what version it was then. And it was to replace a Riser FS, if that doesn't ring some memories with people. I had built this as a backup system because it was, I built this in 2005, but it scaled beyond what I should have scaled it to. It was a mess, and I needed to move over to a better storage system. And I was like, FreeNAS, this looks cool. And I already liked the BSD stuff because I was, monowall, then into pfSense, et cetera, on my networking side. And it was just kind of cool to play with it. And then 9 is when I believe IX Systems got involved, if I remember the history correctly. And it's been great ever since.
Yeah. So you were pre-ZFS even.
I had
amazing.
some UFS systems. Yes. I was ZFS fanboy early on though.
Hey, and you mentioned monowall. I got to stop right there. Yeah. I don't hear that mentioned ever in any other conversation. It's nice to meet another former monowall user because that was like one of the first firewalls I stood up as well.
Yep.
Loved that thing.
Oh yeah,
it was
on
awesome.
On a floppy disk. Remember that was always like how the configs were saved, and you had like just a system running on a floppy because we didn't really have USB sticks back then. So
yeah, it was so freaking reliable though. It just worked. It was awesome.
It just worked.
We are all dating ourselves pretty badly here. I mean, I'll jump in there. I remember using Freesco. Does anybody ring the bell with that one as their firewall sort of product? It was similar kind of idea.
Can't say.
Booted off a floppy drive. And I remember I was using it with scavenged, the coaxial, whatever it was, 10 base 2 at the time, looked like the old TV style cabling. Okay. That was the first LAN I built. For those of you who never had to suffer through that, be very thankful. It was,
My career started in the 90s crimping TwinAx, the T connectors, and balancing them with the resistors on the end. And
okay. So you're a 90s child. You remember IPX networking and all these things we had to suffer through to get where we're at. Like my kids don't even know how to set up the network now. They're just like, what's the Wi-Fi password? That's all they know.
Yeah.
Right?
There's so many
how good you have it.
Years of doing this.
We'll have to work on that. I got to get my kids learning how to do that. I'll give them a switch and say, here's you go. Here's how you get on there. Once you figure out this, then you'll get access to the internet again. Make it a summer project for them, just to frustrate them a little bit.
Think.
Yeah. So I guess I got to ask too, how many systems do you have for TrueNAS in your house? I know I have a couple, but I mean, I work here, so I got my home prod. I got some that I tool around with. How many do you kind of have on a regular?
5 right now on the regular. Just because I have a lot of stuff, so it's kind of spread out. I'm a little bit of a data hoarder, but an organized data hoarder. So that's, I just think I should keep everything. And I've always been that way. There's forever ago, if someone wants to dig and they're good at OSINT, they can find a Reddit post about me being a data hoarder for having a collection of all the magazines I collected back when they were digital copies of them. I just kept them all. If I got CDs, remember the CDs used to come with like some of the tech magazines? I would just download them because why not?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I have them, and I was like, they used to be on media, and then I didn't want to have to get the media out. But so I have a lot of TrueNASs. I also have just a bunch of random things as I like to test it. One of those little mini PCs that is all NVMe, I loaded TrueNAS on and did a video about. So it's not on all the time. I'm working on like a low powered lab build, and it's kind of cool because questions I know we'll probably get to is like some of the things you build with them, but I like the concept that the all solid state, low wattage, low idle, and TrueNAS with all of its applications, we can build something really cool that's an all-in-one box. So I have a few projects that are scattered across my bench right now. I kind of round robin between them. You know how it is in tech, where it's like,
Oh, yeah.
which project
Absolutely.
piqued my interest today? Which is my stuck on that I have to go put down to get some fresh air and think about why it isn't working.
Exactly. I mean, and we see a lot of people use those kind of small form factor systems. They're doing them for whether it's, a ruggedized environment of their own. People will take their TrueNAS system literally on the road with them in like a camper van, or they'll put it on a boat and they'll say, hey, I want something that can be, relatively resilient to vibrations or, being rocked around on a boat. You wouldn't do that with a bunch of spinning hard drives. And it also needs to be low power because maybe they're running it off a solar bank.
Yes. And the disappointment, and it's got me stuck, is I was really excited as I took it apart and got the power supply out of it. It's got a built-in power supply. I'm like, I could rewire this for 12 volt. Turns out it's 18. So
Oh, no.
I was,
Yeah.
So now it's like, because, RV systems, because I was going to do exactly like you said, put it in RV. I was like, perfect. 12 volt system, no converter, no loss from the converter. So let's just do a 12 volt system. It turns out it needs 18. So now I'm on the hunt to find one that is small form factor like that uses 12 volt. So I think it'd make it a fun project.
I need to check and see, because I had my own little toy project. It was one of those Radza X4s, I think. It's one of those N100 processors. It's basically a Pi without being a Pi, right? It's not ARM.
But x86, so it'll run TrueNAS. But I've
so it'll run TrueNAS.
ARM
but now you do have an ARM version. So
there is.
Say
if you're
tinkering, Tom.
If you're tinkering, you can definitely tinker with ARM. It's got me curious. I'm seeing more and more interest on the ARM side. So that's cool. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's kind of how you've been using it personally. Can you tell us a little bit how you use TrueNAS for your business? Because people might not understand that, you don't just do this as a hobbyist on YouTube. You've made quite a career for yourself out of not just using TrueNAS, but working with technology as a whole. So kind of how does TrueNAS factor into that? Like, what have you sort of done with us?
So we have, I'm in Detroit, so I can't name clients, but we'll just say automotive. And I think they got about 1.6 petabytes running on TrueNAS, because
so
so
typical small deployment,
just a little small deployment on there.
Yeah.
Movie companies are probably the more prominent ones we work with. The automotive companies are starting to create a lot of data, so storing that much data in the cloud, not really tenable. Also, automotive companies leaning into the secrecy of things, going, we kind of like that it doesn't go up to a cloud somewhere and that we keep this on a separate network. And movie companies have similar restrictions. I have learned that, in the manufacturing world, you have rules like CMMC, DFARS, ITAR, et cetera. So there's a lot of data security rules and a lot of governance that goes around these. And it turns out none of them, the government's got nothing on Sony Pictures. So we've learned working with movie companies, there's a lot of rules on data security that are like, we took what the government did and made it harder of auditing it. So they also have to keep it on-prem is preferred. They just worry about the next superhero movie getting out to the public, or any frame or still of it, whatever that may be. So the movie companies have been a really popular one as well. And, TrueNAS, you got to build it and then build another one because you have to back it up. And most companies have, even if it's their home, and we've done this for, well, let's just say in the movie industry, the owner's home is bigger than other people's businesses. So we do have times where they'll back it up to their home. We actually built one TrueNAS that's in an RV. I didn't think about this. If someone said they want to put an RV, I thought travel. Then they told me the volume of storage they wanted. I'm like, why would anyone need that much storage in an RV? Turns out that they shoot in Epic Red, the fancy cameras that shoot in 8K, and they shoot commercials, and they go out to set locations. So they built it into an RV with all the set, and they got an editing room they gutted the RV. It's not really exactly an RV, but it's got a rack in it now, and that's how they pull all the editing tapes for each day of editing they do when they shoot a commercial. When you see some weird commercial shot on site, it may have been done that way, and they have to store it somewhere. And it's one time. We have an elephant for this footage. The elephant is here for one day. We have to have backups of all the footage we have of the elephant doing the thing. It's the strangest use cases you hear from them, but they're really fun at the same time. We're like, we get to do this once. If not, we got to rent the elephant again.
That sounds familiar. We've had to work with customers like that before, where they're filming a movie on site on the side of a mountain, literally in this case, and they have their red cameras, and they have to bring it back to base camp where they're running TrueNAS off a generator because again, they're out in the wilderness. There's no no infrastructure.
there's no electricity where these are.
But they have to dump all that day's footage. It has to be backed up on ZFS, protected and all that good stuff so they can get out and shoot again the next day. Wild. But yeah.
The technology challenge, they were trying to figure out how to get it back to home base. And I'm like, they're like, can we do it with Starlink? I'm like, look, when you create 2 terabytes for each shot, there's just not enough bandwidth currently optioned with Starlink that you could send that all out. And it's always the discussion we end up like, we can help you with this. And it's kind of cool to, even with some of the cars that run some of the data, we just have a 25 gig cable. They pull it into the bay at the automotive when they're done doing the testing, and they offload everything with a 25 gig cable, and all that's cool. But there's no way to wirelessly get it off. Even with a wireless connection, it's not that fast compared to hardlining it. So that is a big challenge. They got to
what's old is new again.
Yeah.
So you go back to SneakerNet again, because we've seen people do that too, where it's literally we're actually just moving the drives by hand and driving them down further down to the base camp where they get put on the network. And it's like, okay, that works.
For seeding as well, we have a client. They have an Indiana location and a Florida location. And that was the easiest way to synchronize that much data, was to seed it and then get and put it in a truck and drive it all the way down to their other office in Florida. And that's how now they stay in sync on there. It's gotten out of sync because someone made some horrible choices, and they're like, what are you going to do to fix this? I'm like, you broke it so bad. I'm sorry. Someone's got to put that in the car and drive it back to Indiana to resync. I mean, I don't have a plan B for what you did here.
Yeah, it's like the old adage, right? Never underestimate the bandwidth of a station wagon full of tapes, or in this case, hard drives barreling down the highway.
Exactly.
It's
a whole way to move data.
more petabytes per
per mile.
cubic foot per cubic foot and per mile now. So just put them all in your wagon or your SUV, drive them down there, and power it up on the other end. And I bet it's going to be just fine. But hey, we're talking about sort of wild and crazy things like that. I mean, certainly like doing it on an RV for on-site shoots is pretty complex, but let's take a little bit of technical complexity in here. I mean, this is TrueNAS Tech Talk after all.
Yes.
Can you talk about kind of one of the wildest sort of complex storage environments you've been working on from like a technical, not just an environmental perspective?
So one of them that I'll be able to, because there's a whole video I'm going to be making on this. So all the details, the company and everything. Company's name is RailStream. The reason I bring up the company name is because what they do is record trains. Like they have live cameras. So there are 47, I think it's 47 cameras by 30 locations. So if you're a train enthusiast, you want to watch this. But that means if you have video, you want to watch the train going by, not empty tracks. So you need to be able to seek back and forth, which means you got to create thumbnails. So it turns out that's 1,400 thumbnails a minute, 84,600 an hour, 2 million thumbnail images a day being written and then deleted because you can't keep them forever. So this is a pretty amazing amount of data that is just absolutely sustained writes. Now, how do you do this without resorting to solid state or some of the other solutions? So I've already done the video on the Mach 2 drives around December. So what this is leading up to is, now that we've been using them for 8 months, getting the real performance out of these drives without resorting to solid state. So you can get this many drives because the volume of storage is better served, or more cost effective, we should say, on our spinning Rust drives. You broke them up into Z1 because data integrity is important, but Z2 just added a little bit of extra overhead for this. We took 40 drives that are SAS. They show up as 80 drives. Now, the tricky part is at the time we set these up, I don't believe there's any TrueNAS native support for Mach 2 drives. Maybe if there's some interest after I do this video, I don't know, maybe someone
I was going to say, you might start something here. I feel the pressure building already. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, so someone will make this a feature request. It's not rocket appliance to really set this up. You just have to make sure, because you have one physical drive with one physical spinning platter, but 2 heads, meaning it shows up as 2 drives. This gives you really good performance profile, but obviously you have to be careful, and you don't want to put these in the same VDEV because a single platter stops spinning, you lose to 2 drives. And with us doing a Z1 setup with a lot of VDEVs, well, there's a lot of potential for catastrophic, this whole system come crashing down.
Absolutely.
It's one of those easy to shoot your foot off situations if you don't think about it in advance.
Yeah. Do these cautiously. They also, SAS are the only ones that show up as dual controller. I don't think we'd get the same level of performance out of the SATA ones, because the SATA lets the hard drive figure out the logic versus letting ZFS treat it as 2 different drives. So I don't think the same performance, for those wondering, would come out of any of the SATA ones, but the SAS ones are plentiful out there. They're affordable because they've been in the enterprise space for a while. And I kind of hope more companies get into this. Seagate, I think their mock drives are the only ones I'm aware of out there. I don't know that any other companies have started the Dual-Actuator. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. I think there might be another company that at least sort of tested it, but they might not have gone to full production. And you're right about the SATA ones in that they sort of pick an arbitrary spot on their length of LBAs, and everything before that goes to the first head, everything after it goes to the second. We've seen people try to do that with, manually partitioning their drives, but we always suggest trying to avoid that when you're working in TrueNAS, because you're already adding a lot of complexity by doing the Mach 2 with the SAS, with the two separate, logical units on a single physical device. Adding partitions into the mix can really sort of mess it up. I think if I can find the video in the timestamp, we've talked about some of the challenges with this in a previous video, so I'll put a card up there if I can find it. It had to do with, certain SCSI commands cross those LU boundaries. And I think one of them was, flush cache, which it's a potential performance impact. But the other one was things like format unit. And obviously, as you mentioned, Tom, if you format 2 units on the same Z1 VDEV, you're going to have a bad time. It's not going to be a particularly resilient situation.
And they share serial numbers, which creates it. So that's, I think, where the big indexing problem that you guys had mentioned. I believe it was like episode 3 or 4. It was an earlier podcast.
Yeah, it was early.
It was early. You're going to make me dig in the archives for this one, aren't you? I'll have to do that. And if anybody finds the exact timestamp, we'll have to make sure we get that in there too.
Yeah, I honestly think the serial number side is probably the most annoying piece in TrueNAS to do right, because that's there for a lot of safety reasons, obviously.
Yes.
You don't want to be adding the same drive twice, so we got to change some logic to accommodate that a little more gracefully, while still offering some level of protection. I don't want to find people screwing up their pools.
Exactly. Yeah. It's one of the things that I think we had to make the decision about changing our way we handle multiple SAS paths as well, is because that's one of the very easy ways you can shoot yourself in the foot, is adding sort of the same VDEV to the pool twice or the same physical device to the pool twice over different paths, and it's registered differently. It's kind of related to, when people virtualize TrueNAS under Proxmox and they don't have that proper arbitration for the disks in there. Sort of related to that kind of failure case, but it's something you want to avoid when you're dealing with, any kind of data that you care about whatsoever.
Yes, for sure. And like I said, the risk is low because these are thumbnails. Worst case, if it all fell apart, the thumbnail generators would stop working, which is not ideal, but it's also why they're thrown out so fast, because it only keeps so many days of storage, so we don't back it up. But the bigger picture is, this is something that, as I'll put all the prices in when we do the video, it's affordable for people. And I think that's something important to a lot of people, is that, hey, I want to build something that performs. I can't afford a bunch of enterprise solid states. What can I do? What is within my budget to build something really nice and more advanced in your home lab than just a couple storage servers? And I definitely know there's those enthusiasts that have they have some cool ideas and they need some storage, or maybe there's a startup that goes, I can't afford the hardware credits and the cloud isn't really practical, and let me see if I can build this here.
Well, we're happy to enable all kinds of crazy use cases, whether it's personal or professional. But let's, talking about some of those crazy use cases, let's talk about some emerging sort of storage trends. Now, you've obviously got a really large audience. Have you sort of noticed anything that they're really doing in terms of, like popular things, stuff you're getting questions about, comments people are saying, hey, I'm really seeing an uptick in this? What's kind of twigging their interest these days?
I'm going to say that just a little bit of the elephant in the room, which is that these streaming companies exist at the idea of only being slightly more convenient than other methods of acquiring the media and the things we want to watch. And let's just say they've decided to swing the other way, and we look like cable subscriptions just used to, that we were trying to get away from. And because of that, more and more people, and it's not just because of media, and Jeff Geerling did a great job of pointing out, and he was quite upset with YouTube for taking it down. He had a whole thing on how to take media he physically bought all these DVDs and plays them. And TrueNAS is a pretty popular place for that. And I was even looking, because me and my son, he's 19 now, we talk about the classics and what movies from the 80s or 90s. And I have a lot of these where I bought DVD sets. I mean, I want to rewatch Battlestar Galactica, but I was like, I don't really want to swap through a bunch of DVDs. I'm going to put them all on. I own them. I bought the rights to this media. I just want it digital. Not to mention, there was that article, I think it was about a year or two ago, we learned some of the big manufacturers that were making printed, like ones you buy in the store DVDs. Turns out they will stop reading after like 15 years. A few archivists have discovered this, and this is obviously a challenge, but we can solve that challenge. We can have the storage on our own, and it gets well indexed by any of the media servers, Plex, Jellyfin, etc. And now I have this instantly accessible. I owned it all. I did not try to, do this in some nefarious way. And I think that's just where a lot of people are going. There's been a lot of popularity of the automatic ripping machine, the other ARM project. And man, that one is a really cool one to be able to just keep popping in DVDs. It organizes, puts everything where you want it. I've seen like the multi DVD changers. I've seen people post pictures of them going, that's popular again. Which is kind of cool to see. Brings back memories of those days.
Yeah, I actually have been meaning to set that up myself. I have, a lot of box sets of DVDs that my wife's been asking for me to put somewhere where it's easy for her to access it from, a tablet or one of the streaming devices connected to a TV. So I've actually been looking at automated ripping machine to put my, of course, legally acquired media onto my own TrueNAS server.
That's the thing. This is all stuff we've purchased. I had a huge Blu-ray
unrelated.
Right. So my Blu-ray collection, it was not only the convenience, because again, I have kids and they were too lazy to put a disc in a player. That was hard. They're just used to hitting a button on a remote and instant access. But at the same time, I'm a quality snob. So I wouldn't re-encode things. Like, no. When I'm copying the disc, I'm copying the disc. I want all my lossless audio with true HD audio. And, I don't want to recompress it, because this is always my gripe is you go and you get a 4K stream from one of the popular services and it looks worse than my 1080p Blu-ray because it's been so compressed to hell and back. It's just, no good.
I have a 70-inch OLED TV. I want all the pixels. Like, I want the highest quality. There's a reason I want that. And maybe there's a reason there's 5 storage servers here.
So I was kind of lamenting this with my wife the other day. She hears me rant about this and, her eyes kind of glaze over and roll back and she's done. But, I was like, well, what about 8K's coming? You have TVs now, which can do 8K. What's the next physical media format? Or is there a streaming service that will give you access to that kind of not overly compressed, high bitrate, 8K quality reference material? Like, I'll pay extra for that. I'm okay with legally acquiring it, but dang, like you've taken that option away now because I can't go to the store and get that like pristine 4K thing now.
I think people don't realize until they look at a Blu-ray going, oh, that is different than watching it through a streaming service. Because even though they're delivering it in 4K when you pay the extra for the subscription, like you said, there's compression, there's artifacting, there were sacrifices made, there's grouping of pixels together. And I get it that like AV1 and some of the newer encoding methods help, but there's compression. It's lost. We don't, unless you're doing something absolutely lossless, there is some trade-offs that are made. We sound like we're the people now that were the vinyl people from before. That I only can do vinyl records. That's us now. We can only watch actual
total snobs.
Blu-ray, not compressed.
You're not snobs. You have standards. That's the way you phrase it. As long as you're not going to the level of audiophiles where you need your cable elevators and gold-plated HDMI.
Yeah.
But it brings up another good idea. Like you said, Chris, you can't go to the store and purchase these things anymore. It's the same way. If a streaming service decides, hey, we're not going to purchase the license for this anymore, well, you don't have access to it anymore. And that kind of tails into sort of data sovereignty. That's not just about sort of, geographic restrictions, right, Tom? Like this is about people wanting to own their data, control their data. It's my data. It's my rules. You bought a license for it.
It feels like you're constantly with any large cloud company or whatever it is. It's like, here's low cost to get you in. Eventually our business model isn't to make money. Our business model is to get enough customers so a VC firm buys us and then we'll just go, I'm washing my hands. I built the cool thing. Sorry that insert name of large VC company bought it and now charges you access to your data, and treats you like a hostage, not a customer. The data sovereignty is people going, I kind of want to own the media. I want to hold on to the experience. And I have some non-technical friends, and it's come up even with discussions to them. They're like, I don't know where to put all the stuff I have. And it's what brings them to the tech side. They're like, I have experiences I've recorded on my phone and it's all locked into Google and I've hit a limit. Now Google subscriptions are getting more, or I have to get rid of memories that I have. Where do I put those memories? Even if they're not technical, they have the concept if it's only on a computer, that computer could die and then they don't have them anymore. So they think about, how do I have it? How do I get to own it? So I'm more in control of it, because we've heard stories of these cloud companies making a digital mistake, even at the largest scale. And I'm sure it happens far more to some random person who goes, well, all my kids' photos are on there. Now it's gone. And they won't make the news, or there's not any media company to pick up when Bob lost all his kids' photos, but because Google said, whoops. A thing happened. And so I think there's a lot more people just coming up with that realization that we want to be able to have it, possess it, own it. My data, I can put it on a box that I have. And I think that's, that, and combined with how do they back it up? The buddy backup topic is becoming really popular. I get it, because the cloud services, and for a lot of reasons, a lot of pressures coming from like AI and competing things, and some of the realistic of we need to make money with all these data centers, costs are going up on storage in the cloud. They just don't, despite storage getting cheaper every time I buy a hard drive, it's the opposite for these cloud providers. So people going, once again, away from subscription service, the request for and people pursuing ideas around the buddy backup is, I think, a really hot topic. I think almost every live stream, or just about everyone that comes up, is like, hey, how do we build it? Me and my friend both want to back up data to each other's houses. We are geographically separated enough. We're not next door, so this makes sense.
Yeah, say another media type we don't talk about a lot that's passionate for me is, the Blu-ray library, but we're also avid book collectors in my family. And I mean like thousands of physical, like Dead Tree books, right? Yeah. But then I also have this massive ebook library, and it's, you've seen what Amazon's done with Kindle and other things. You don't really own the book. It's just they're letting you, rent it essentially, even though you've paid to purchase. So it's annoying. I want to keep a copy of that because I want to have it around in case, I want to read it again later, and I want to store it and protect it. That's mine. I purchased it. Again, not trying to do anything nefarious here, but it's just the idea of, do you own what you purchased?
Yeah. And book collections, I love that there's Calibre and tools out there to help us index and organize all of those. I have not tried it yet, but I know that in TrueNAS in the app library, there's one for book collections I've been looking at. So I'm like, ooh, that might be kind of cool to load them all in there instead of Calibre.
I personally ported that one over. It's called Jellu. And so it's for indexing your actual paper copies of your books, which is fantastic. It has a mobile enabled version that you can just go and scan the ISBN on the back, mark it as I own this. You can even put information like which shelf it's on in your house, like all that good stuff. It's amazing. But like that's important to me, and I use my TrueNAS for all that.
Yep. It's one more piece of the data that you own that I think has become more and more important of where's my data? How do I have some level of control of it? People are, at least in concept, even if they're not in the level of technical people probably listen to this podcast, but even the outsiders are starting to go, I definitely need to back this up. They understand the data not immutable. Immutability is something we like to use, but it can just go away pretty quickly on accident. So having these backups and everything else of it, and being able to have all your data, I think that's just like a topic that comes up recurring across, and you guys probably see it too between the forums and which apps people are asking for.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about things like the right to repair and right to ownership. I'm a big fan of Louis Rossmann and his organization Futo as well about that, and that does huge strides for hardware. We want to make sure that people don't forget about the software side of that too. There's lots of things where it's the software is tied in with the hardware and it requires some sort of activation code or things like that, which obviously we're against that kind of idea as an open source company. But it's like you said, the software and the data itself is, you need to be able to have your ownership of that data, your right to access that data, your right to control what is happening with that data. Whether you're talking about it in a context of, you can or cannot use my data for AI if you're storing it up in somebody's public cloud, somebody else's computer. Maybe there's something they put in their EULA that says, hey, we're allowed to do things. Look at what Adobe did with Photoshop Cloud that got all the creatives kind of got their hair up quite a bit on that one when Adobe said, we're going to use content you created to train our AI to create content instead of you and put you out of the job. Would you like to be participating in that? And obviously a lot of people said, no, thank you. We're out. So, we're kind of looking into that as something we have a kind of a vested interest in, both personally and professionally. We really want people to embrace sort of that, the open source, the right to repair and the right to own, not just your hardware, but your data too. So, I mean, we're big on the open source as, as a way of, developing things. It's not just how we run our business. So, I mean, do you see that a lot? Like, how do you, what's your take on this, Tom? I mean, pretty sure I have a good idea, but.
Absolutely. I'm obviously a long time open source advocate. And even my earlier career, I was that person beating the drum of, I was a Red Hat person in the 90s, and I became a Debian convert in the early 2000s. I was, stuck in dependency hell with Red Hat, which is what got me out of it. I was a Sunmail administrator, and eventually we threw it out, went with Debian because dependencies became easier. But back to the open source question. Open source is a development model, not a business model. So I try to make sure that's clear in people's heads that open source is how we develop the software. There are business models around it. I have had way too many debates when people offer code, but for example, they charge for hosting. And there was someone that was really emailing me, Tom, you are just not understanding open source. And I was like, okay. And they're like, they don't offer free hosting, therefore it's not open source. I'm like, the code's open, it's free. The hosting is a cost. That's how they make their money. There's a lot of companies have that like business model, and they're just like, no, you don't understand. And I'm like, no, I think you don't understand. Their business model is, here's some free software. Feel free to host it yourself. By the way, pay us to host it. You get to own your data. I don't think that's a bad business model, and this person did. They're not the only one. I've had a few comments that come up on videos like that. So I always try to separate it that way, going development model and transparency, I think, is just absolutely paramount here, especially when we worry about security, we worry about backdoors, and Europe has been leading the way in it. And I think it's because they've seen Broadcom, the elephant in the room, do such a change. I mean, if you're a large company and you're at the C-suite, your job is to mitigate risk, and or used to be by we'll just call them out. Microsoft saying all the fear they put around the open source, like, it's terrible, you can't use it for your business. But things have shifted, and they now realize the security of, we're going to just use VMware, and then Broadcom buys them and 400% the price. Well, that's a risk to your business, because suddenly your budget that you had, you don't, because it's now going to Broadcom. And, there's those questions that I've had when we do all these transfers are like, well, what are we getting for all this license increase? Is it a better product? Oh, it's the same product. They just know you need it. So they've decided to raise the price 400%. And the C-suite starts with, well, the switch. Oh, no, there's a high switching cost because we've trained everybody on it. So you either pay 400% now, or you could pay it, over time with them, or you're going to pay up front to retrain everybody, and just the labor and just business disruption of switching. But with the open source and more licenses going that way, I'm actually seeing, and it's pretty well known now, open source didn't kind of win the war. It has absolutely won the war, so to speak. It is now used in pretty much every of the Fortune 500. It's used everywhere. And I think we're seeing more and more companies going, yeah, this is probably the way to go. Vates over in Europe with XCP&G, Proxmox in Europe. Recently, I did a video on Grist, which is a really cool open source, kind of like an Airtable alternative, where it's low code, no code spreadsheet meets database, and a really cool thing, but 100% self-hosted, easy to get the data in, and more importantly, easy to get the data out. So they have the whole data sovereignty. And I'm seeing that out of all these different startups in Europe. NetBird, they looked at what was going on in the US, and they said, hey, let's overlay VPNs are a great way to solve a problem, but why don't we make the entire thing top to bottom open source, as opposed to making a piece of it open source, saying, hey, we have an open source component. Yeah. But it only ties to your control plane that I have to pay for. So is it really open source? You didn't give me the back end, so I don't have as much control. So I love seeing that all these companies are out there. I think there's a lot more pervasiveness of it, and combine that with like the Sovereign Tech Fund and figuring out ways. There's a lot of methodology so we can help fund these. They're not relying on just community, because it's getting them started is the hard part. Once they have some market adoption and they have some business model, people are often happy to use a product they can have and then go, can we just throw money at you for it? Sure, we can do that. If they have a licensed model that is for support or whatever. I don't think people are against the money. They just don't want the rug pull of, you told me one thing and you did it different, and I lost access to everything I built with it.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is about a lot of it is about avoiding that sort of, like you said, the hostage scenario. I'm pretty sure there are, I know there's a couple of actual like government agencies over in Europe that have said, hey, we're dropping this, closed source product, whether it's been, Microsoft Office, cloud hosted, that say we're going to Libre. I think there's some other ones that are trying to, mandate the use of open source in every position possible. Some of them are just saying wherever an open source option is available, make sure it comes to the table, because they are all about, being able to maintain control. And like you said, the freedom to leave and migrate away from the solution. They never want to get, painted into that corner again.
We've seen Germany leading the way in the EU in particular about kind of mandating no open source is kind of a first principle now. Like that's where we start from.
Yeah, I think the recent changes and everything of all these different companies, like they're doing growth for the sake of growth. That is the way I feel about all of them. They're just growth for growth's sake. And that's not sitting well with many people.
Yeah. Well, when we're talking about growth for growth's sake and bubbles, I mean, we have to talk a little bit about AI then, obviously. I mean,
yes.
The current bubble, I mean, we're all old enough to remember the .com bubble in the, the early 2000s. So what do we think? Are we in an AI bubble right now where there's an awful lot of hype and there's something underneath it, where we did see a lot of good companies come out of the fallout of the .com burst. So
yes,
I think there's probably potential for that to happen here again. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. The original tech bubble was interesting because many of us, I didn't have money back then. It was the 90s, early 80s, and I was poor. But if I had money, I would have been one of those people like, I'm going to buy into it. And there's people who made a lot because they sold before the bubble popped, but it was a lot of average people. And out of that, we got the hyperscalers. We got some of these incredible companies that have done some things that are like the Amazon and et cetera. But it's a very different bubble now because all that giant wealth built in Silicon Valley is trying to find the next thing. It's a bunch of them looking for the next vision, the next like 1000x return on investment, because those who bet on Google, those who bet on Amazon, we didn't know they were going to turn into what they were, Facebook, et cetera. But now it's them playing with all the money because they're trying to chase the, replacing of all the people. Because what do we keep hearing? We won't need coders in another 3 months. Someone made a supercut of one. I can't remember which. I think it was it wasn't ChatGPT, but one of the other ones. Someone had a whole collection of all the times they said we're 3 to 6 months out. And apparently we're almost 3 years into being 3 to 6 months out every time they need another funding round of we're replacing all the developers. Sorry, you're not going to have a job anymore.
Well, self-driving should have been here by now, right? I mean, how many years?
Self-driving's around the corner for 15 years. Soon.
Self-driving, heck, where's my flying cars? I was promised those too.
And I always say, don't listen to the people that are trying to raise money. They generally have a different motivation than you. You want to know what it is. Now, once the really wealthy people, there'll be some fallout for average people, but the really wealthy people just blowing money on this is not my problem, hopefully. And so as they lose money that they will not be able to buy as many yachts for, and because to think that a company has it in their business plan, we're going to blow, and this is ChatGPT, OpenAI, we're going to burn $5 billion. They burned $5 billion last year and expect to burn $5 or $6 billion this year. And he said something along the lines of needing like $1 trillion to make it. I mean, at some point, someone goes, "Is the money going to run out?" But what shakes out of this, locally hosted AI. I just set another friend up with it, and he bought some NVIDIA cards, and he's like, "Oh, this is cool." I'm like, "Yeah." Now there are some tactical, useful things being able to self-host it, because once again, we own it, we control it, and these companies to entice us with use cases. Now, is it replacing it? No, but does it help me write a script once in a while? Yes. Tom's not really good at Python. Turns out the AI stuff is, but I will give a big warning here. It is confident on the right answer as it is on the wrong answer. And friend of ZFS, Alan Jude, they have such a great write-up that says everything, like how do you tune ZFS with AI? We'll just say AI index on Reddit. Turns out it gives some really bad ZFS advice occasionally that will not be good for your data. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, that it's not that, but it will get you way further. People with basic questions in a home lab, I'm like, run with it. Start with some of the AI stuff, ask it questions. Right now, go ahead and use because it costs them more than $20 a month if you use the AI a lot. And I certainly burn more than my $20 a month subscription for ChatGPT. Once you get an understanding of things, you want to move on to locally hosted. Awesome. And I think there's great potential there, but just stay away from the hype people that keep telling me, should I be worried about the future? Maybe, but not necessarily, because AI is going to replace people.
Yeah, it's not magic. So we do some experimentation, and we're doing a lot of things with AI here internally, vibe coding and all that. And we talk to the engineers about like, look, if you're not exhausted by the end of the session working with AI, you're not doing it right, because you have to be sitting there watching it like a hawk and constantly mashing the escape button, say, no, let's do it this way. Oh, I see where you're going there. Great, or no, or yes, but, and like having to constantly steer it. And if you're not engaged at that level, your results are going to be pretty suspect.
Yeah, we did a presentation last year at a tech conference, and we got permission to do this. They fixed a lot of the stuff, but they let us highlight some of the problems we found in some of the code. That was a company that was trying to say that you can take your level 1 text and turn them into level 3. Our answer was level 3 texts get enhanced. Level 1 text will just run this stuff. And one of the problems where it was running things in the wrong context. So because it was running system level code in some of these management tools, it ran things as system. So when you created things like a user delete script, it didn't delete the user you thought it was deleting because it was running things as system. The AI just didn't, like, there wasn't good safeguards around it. It also, one of the scariest ones, and I love this because we did the talk, then we did Q&A, and the product manager was sitting in the front row making faces at us, which is fun. But then someone came up to the mic to ask us a question on the stage, and it just shocked everyone. They said when we were doing questions, because it questions knowledge bases, and they said it gave us an entire customer. It gave us an entire scenario, and we think it has someone else's customer data in our set. Turns out they actually addressed it before the talk was over, and it was hallucinating an entire customer. So instead of giving you the answer of like, this is our settings, it says, these are the settings for ABC company. And it would drop it. And you're like, we didn't ask for ABC company. We just asked for settings for this. That was supposed to search our knowledge base. So they actually had an accidental hallucination that turned into kind of a support nightmare. So there's still a lot of like, the tactical real world isn't there, but the hype people want you to tell you it will be if you just give me another billion. And that's
they just got to get the next round.
Yeah.
Just got to get the next round.
Yeah, I promise I can make things up for far less money than that. I mean, if you guys in venture capital are interested in just having people tell you random things that aren't true, boy, you can get a great discount. I'll give you 90% off that billion, and I'll do it all day long.
Yeah, it is wild. When you really sit down and think about those numbers, you're like, they lost $5 billion. Can you imagine pitching that even 15 years ago? I have a business that's going to take in 10, but it's going to lose 5. You're like, you're going to lose half the money. Wait a minute, billion, not million, not thousand. Like that's just an unfathomable number to me to say, we're going to burn this.
Well, because that pipe dream's out there, we'll be the next Amazon. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They know what the game is now, and everyone thinks they can hit the lottery.
Yeah. No,
I'm just seeing the the Shark Tank memes coming all over this one. We're just looking at that and going, yeah, that's going to be a no from me.
Yeah, yeah. There's an arrow. There's always the hindsight 2020, and so 15 years from now, what we will look back and go, wow, those are some. Who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Tom. We really appreciate it. I know we probably didn't get to every single topic we wanted to do, but we'll just have to have you either come back on our show or we'll have to jump into yours.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll look for your live streams and I'll crash in a few of those. Show up in the comment section. Maybe Kris and I can come on and sort of co-host one with you if you're interested.
Yeah, I think the next thing that I'll bring you guys on for will be the release of the new version, because that's exciting. That's all the new stuff coming along with that. I have not had a chance to test it. I've just been reading and living vicariously through all the home labs that are testing it.
Yeah, we've had
new version day is always the best day around here. So yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for joining us on the show today, Tom. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed our interview with Tom Lawrence today. As we wrap up, a few notes for our fans. We have over 1,000 users already testing out the Goldeye beta, which is awesome. A big thank you to everybody who's doing that and sending feedback in. We appreciate it as always. We already have some fixes planned and coming to the RC1, including a fix for users who are unable to upgrade due to some boot partition layouts. There's also a pool creation issue that's going to be addressed for systems that have embedded media card readers. In other words, if you have an empty SD card slot, which doesn't respond to calls to the device. So we'll, of course, be covering that and some other fixes in future episodes. In the meantime, of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show so you don't miss out on the next installment. And as usual, send your questions in to t3@truenas.com. We'd love to answer your questions on the air in a future segment, and we'll see you next time.